All right, we do have the post-college football Week 7 AP poll that was just released. I'm going to give you guys my instant reaction, as I always do, to it. Just like we all expected, there's a change in the top three. We thought at the beginning of the season, Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia were kind of on a separate tier. Well, now Tennessee enters that tier. And like many of us suspected, they are coming in at number 3. Georgia stays at number 1. No surprise there. They won 55-0. They received 31 first-place votes. Ohio State coming in at number 2. They received 17 first-place votes. And Tennessee coming in at number 3, getting 15 first-place votes. So very... nice top 3 right there in terms of it being pretty balanced. There's no unanimous number 1. And guys, I keep hearing people argue Tennessee should be number 2, Tennessee should be number 1. Tennessee has a better resume than Ohio State, than Georgia. And I think we're not really in disagreement in terms of how good these teams are. I just think people rank differently. Some people rank on the best teams. Some people rank on the most deserving teams. So certainly, if we're going by most deserving, Tennessee, my God, Tennessee should be in front of Ohio State. They should be in front of Georgia. But if we're going by, I like to do my rankings as sort of a combination of who actually are the best teams and who is the most deserving. So I try and do a combo of it, but I do understand. Listen, if you rank Tennessee number 1, and you go by most deserving, I totally understand that's how some people do their rankings, and that's why 15 voters have Tennessee as the number 1 overall team after beating Alabama. But I just think it's a different overall structure in how we rank teams. Some of us go by best, some of us go by most deserving, some of us go by a combo of both. I try and do a combo of both, but either way, Georgia, again, you win 55-0 or whatever it was against Vanderbilt, you're not going to move down from number 1. It'd be very hard. Ohio State at number 2, their schedule has definitely been a big talking point in terms of people saying they haven't played anyone. They can't help that. Ohio State has the best offense in college football. They've got the most talented offense in college football without the number 1 wide receiver in college football right now, who should be coming back from an injury here pretty soon. But listen, again, it's just a situation. If you go by most deserving, I understand ranking Tennessee number 1. They are number 3. We do have Michigan passing Clemson after their big blowout win over Penn State. I think it's well-deserved. Coming in at number 4, Clemson did get a big win on the road at FSU. They covered the 4.5-point spread, and they were actually up by 20 points, I believe, in the fourth quarter of that game. FSU scored a few garbage time touchdowns. Clemson looked really good on the road in a hostile environment. Alabama drops down to number 6. I'm not surprised at all. They lose by 3 points against an extremely, impressive Tennessee team on the road. It's a game, they were leading late. It looked like they had an interception that could potentially seal it. Doesn't surprise me that Alabama did not drop far at all. So they're number 6. They're in front of Ole Miss, and I agree with that. I know Alabama has 1 loss. I know Ole Miss is undefeated. But I think Ole Miss is definitely going to lose a few games. Now, quickly, one of the things I wanted to say, I said this earlier, it's the issue with the SEC teams possibly getting 3 teams into the playoffs. You've got 3 SEC teams right now inside of the top 6, and you've got a few different scenarios where Tennessee could finish with 1 loss, Georgia could finish with 1 loss, Alabama could finish with 1 loss. One of those teams would be an SEC champion. The other team their 1 loss would be in the SEC championship, and then the other team just wouldn't make the SEC championship at all. That would be Tennessee losing to Georgia, and then Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship. That would be doomsday for college football, because you're talking about 3 potential SEC teams making the playoff. And then you do have an interesting situation within the Big Ten. You've got potentially Ohio State beating Michigan, and that would be a 1-loss Michigan team that doesn't make the Big Ten championship game, but their only loss coming on the road at Ohio State. So those are 2 different scenarios that are setting up. I know people want to throw Ole Miss into the mix. But I think Ole Miss is just simply not good enough. They've had a few very easy games. You're talking about Vanderbilt and Auburn. They beat a Kentucky team that's not very good in my opinion. They will eventually lose a few games here when they face better competition. So TCU still undefeated. Guys, I'm still expecting TCU to finish 9-3. There's so much parity in the Big 12. This TCU team was tested. They were not in control of their home game this week against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was up by 2 touchdowns in the second half of this game. It went to 2 overtimes. TCU ends up winning it, but still, I am not betting on TCU making a New Year's Six bowl. They are coming in at number 8 because they're undefeated. UCLA moves up 2 spots to number 9. They will take on the number 10 team, Oregon. So that will be a top 10 matchup. That will be number 9 versus number 10 College game day in Eugene, Oregon for that one. We've got Oklahoma State falling down a little bit. They're moving down 3 spots. They weren't punished too much. USC moving down 5 spots. That's a thing that I disagree with. I would have USC in front of Oklahoma State. I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I just think USC is a better team. USC, faced, I think, an underrated Utah team, and that was a game they were leading throughout the entirety of it, but they do end up losing on that 2-point conversion. Cam Rising, really, really impressive. Wake Forest coming in at number 13. They were on a bye week, so they move up 1 spot. We've got Syracuse moving up 4 spots, and this is a ranking that's going to be resolved this coming week. What will Syracuse do on the road as a big underdog at Clemson? That is a noon game, I believe, on ABC. So I'm expecting Clemson to win that game. Syracuse probably taking their first loss. Syracuse, I believe, has a few other very tough games to finish the season. They beat NC State. But in my opinion, you've got to put a little bit of an asterisk on that win, considering the Devin Leary news. NC State can't move the ball with their backup quarterback. I think NC State's season is going to completely spiral out of control. Utah, the major win at home against USC. They're up 5 spots. I think that's right. I think Utah is a really good football team. Penn State is down 6 spots, down to number 16. Very interesting with Penn State. I was so disappointed, coming off the bye. Just a horrible performance. Couldn't stop Michigan against the run. But their season is still setting up to be very promising. They're going to lose to Ohio State, but other than that, they win out. They go 10-2. They're possibly in a New Year's Six bowl. Sean Clifford has an extremely low ceiling. That's why I picked Michigan to beat Penn State at home. It's just Sean Clifford's simply not good enough. But the one thing I did not anticipate with this Penn State team, the horrible rush defense. They were completely bullied. That game could have been 48-7. That was real ugly. Penn State was very lucky to get a fluke-tipped pick 6 at the end of the first half. So Penn State with a big whiteout game coming up this week at home against the Minnesota team that's really banged up, that's been losing games. Penn State, I'm expecting them to win that. Then they get another home game versus Ohio State. That one will very likely not be pretty for Penn State, but they do seem to play Ohio State tough, so we will see. We've got Kansas State coming in at number 17. They were on a bye week, not much to talk about there. Illinois moves up to number 18, so Illinois defeated Minnesota. Tanner Morgan suffered what looked like a gruesome injury, and Illinois' defense continues to impress. How about Chase Brown, the running back, getting 41 carries, and Illinois actually threw the ball a little bit. So right now I would say, I think a lot of people would say Illinois is the favorite in the West. I actually think at this point Purdue is the favorite, but it's very close. We've got Kentucky moving up 3 spots. They get Will Levis back, and they beat Mississippi State. I would put Kentucky outside of the top 20, but I'd probably rank them. I think they have a very good defense and a really good run game. Texas up 2 spots, up to number 20. I think that's probably a correction ranking. I feel like they ranked Texas too low originally. I know people are going to say, how does Texas move up? They're 16-point favorites. They only win by 3 against Iowa State, who is now 0-4. But that's a scrappy Iowa State team that has a good defense. I think that's the right ranking for Texas, moving them up to 20. Cincinnati at 21. They had a bye week. I don't have an issue with that. I've got a real problem with North Carolina being ranked. And this was a team that I said was one of the most underrated teams in college football. The defense is just not good enough. You have a team like North Carolina, totally one-dimensional. Probably should have lost to Duke. End up winning late. They allow a ton of points. I just don't understand it personally to rank them over a team like UCF, who I really like personally, but they are ranked. NC State still ranked at number 23. I would have them unranked at this point, with the quarterback injury and things like that. Mississippi State at 24. I could buy it, I guess. I would have a team like UCF in front of them, though. And then they did decide to rank a team out of the American. It's not UCF, it is Tulane. And I like Tulane. I like the idea of giving a smaller school that's having a great season a shout out. They did that with James Madison last week. Of course, James Madison ended up losing. And then the others receiving votes, you've got Purdue, who got a really high-scoring win against Nebraska. Not a real encouraging performance there, but I will say I do like Purdue's offensive upside. LSU getting 87 votes. I don't know, man. I'm not interested. UCF right there. I would have UCF inside the top 20. I think they're a really underrated team. South Carolina, I'm not interested. Kansas getting 12 votes. So we saw Kansas kind of come back down to earth there against Oklahoma. 700 yards of total offense for Oklahoma. But, I mean, I give Kansas credit. Their offense is good. They scored 42 points with their backup quarterback again. But that's a situation where that's more of what we kind of expected with Kansas. James Madison still gets 4 votes, or 6 votes after their loss. Oregon State got an impressive win against Washington State. They get 6 votes. Maryland with 5 votes. They barely beat Indiana. I'm not buying them. South Alabama, that's an underrated team. I like that some voters included South Alabama. Liberty inexplicably gets 2 votes. Liberty nearly lost to a 2-5 FCS Gardner-Webb team. So we're just not, these people are doing no research. Arkansas gets a vote after beating BYU. I don't know. Minnesota gets a vote after having their quarterback get decapitated. And then Florida State, after losing to Clemson, gets a vote. But guys, overall, we are starting to see a common theme with the major Big Three right now. SEC teams at the top, along with those 2 Big Ten teams, Michigan and Ohio State. You look at Michigan's schedule, it looks extremely favorable. I would bet at this point on Michigan going into Columbus undefeated, probably being ranked number 3 or number 4, depending on what the teams in front of them do. Ohio State has 1 tough game remaining before that Michigan game. That's a game at Penn State at noon. And we know Penn State plays Ohio State tough, but that Michigan-Ohio State end of the season, regular season game, we're looking at a potential 1v3, 2v3 type matchup, depending on what Georgia does, where they're ranked, some of these other teams. It should be a really high-ranked game. And the next huge SEC matchup, I would say, it's that game in Georgia in a few weeks, Tennessee at Georgia. So that is the official rankings update. And then, of course, that UCLA-Oregon game, College Game Day, gonna be in Eugene. Kind of disappointing that's a 3:30 game. I'm not understanding that. I would have liked to seen that be a 7:30 game Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, but that is a 3:30 Eastern start. That's a 12, right around noon start time Pacific, College Game Day in Oregon this weekend. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.